Rome believed it had won forever. Carthage was humiliated, without money, without a fleet, without hope. But on the other side of the Mediterranean, a boy was growing up hearing only one thing: destroy Rome. That boy would become the greatest nightmare of the Roman Republic, and within a few years, he would do the impossible: cross the Alps with an army and war elephants. After the First Punic War, Carthage seemed finished. Rome had crushed its historic rival and turned the Carthaginian Empire into a weakened, debt-ridden power. But while the Romans celebrated victory, a man named Hannibal Barca was quietly preparing revenge, and his son, Hannibal, was about to launch a military campaign so absurd that strategists still study today how it was even possible. This is the story of the war that almost destroyed Rome. The end of the First Punic War plunged Carthage into absolute chaos, without resources to pay its mercenary soldiers. The Carthaginian government tried to improvise excuses. The reaction was immediate. The mercenaries revolted, cities burned, commanders were executed, and Carthage entered a brutal internal conflict known as the Mercenary War. The situation became so desperate that Carthage had to hire new mercenaries to fight the old mercenaries it had failed to pay. The empire came dangerously close to collapse. Meanwhile, in Rome, senators watched everything with satisfaction. Their greatest rival was destroying itself. But Rome would make a fatal mistake, underestimating Carthaginian hatred. And then something happened that would change history. In the middle of the crisis, rebels from Sardinia asked the Romans for help. Rome saw an opportunity. Without hesitation, it occupied the island. To the Carthaginians, that was more than humiliation. It was outright theft. Rome still demanded even more tribute and reparations, pushing Carthage to the limit. The Second Punic War began there, not on the battlefield, but inside the mind of one man. Hannibal Barca was one of Carthage's greatest military commanders. Brilliant, relentless, obsessed. Believed the Carthaginian politicians had betrayed their own nation by accepting defeat to Rome. So he decided to act alone. His plan was simple: go to Spain, conquer silver-rich territories, rebuild the Carthaginian economy, create a new military power, and one day return to destroy Rome. At his side was his 9-year-old son, Hannibal Barca. According to ancient accounts, Hamilcar took the boy to a sacred temple and made Hannibal swear one thing: never be a friend of Rome. From that moment on, the boy would grow up surrounded by war. He witnessed battles, saw executions, learned military strategy. Before even becoming an adult, war shaped his childhood, and Rome became his obsession. While Carthage was still paying debts to the Romans, Hamilcar was building something much bigger in Spain. The Carthaginians conquered enormous silver mines, founded cities, expanded territory, trained armies. A new power was emerging. Rome realized too late that Carthage was not dying. It was rebuilding itself, and at the center of that growth was Hannibal, now an adult. He inherited command of the Carthaginian armies in Spain, and his soldiers adored him. He marched beside them, slept on the same ground, faced the same hardships. He was the kind of leader who inspired absolute loyalty, and Rome quickly realized there was a problem growing. Beyond the Alps then came Saguntum, a small Spanish city protected by Rome, even though it was within the Carthaginian sphere of influence. To Hannibal, that was a deliberate provocation. Rome was saying, if you touch the city, there will be war. But maybe that was exactly what both sides wanted. In 219 BC, Hannibal made his decision. He besieged Saguntum for 8 months. The city resisted. Then the walls fell. The massacre began. When the news reached Rome, the Senate exploded in outrage. A Roman delegation was sent to Carthage demanding Hannibal's surrender. The Carthaginian response practically decided the fate of the Mediterranean. Rome chose war. The Second Punic War had begun. The Romans were Confident they had defeated Carthage before, they expected just another quick victory. The Roman plan was simple: invade Carthage by sea and crush Hannibal in Spain. But Hannibal had another plan, something so insane that it seemed impossible. Hannibal would not attack Rome by sea. He would attack from the north, crossing the Alps, with tens of thousands of soldiers, not cavalry, and war elephants. It was one of the riskiest military operations in history. Snow, hunger, frozen ravines, hostile tribes attacking non-stop. Men fell from cliffs, animals froze to death. Some soldiers had to wear clothes taken from their own dead companions just to survive. Even so, Hannibal kept moving forward. When he finally emerged from the Alps, his army was devastated. Of the nearly 100,000 men who had begun the campaign, only around 26,000 remained, but Hannibal did not cross those mountains merely to survive. He crossed them to set Italy ablaze. His real plan was only beginning. Northern Italy was full of Celtic tribes that hated Rome. If he could convince those peoples to join him, Rome would face a war inside its own territory for the first time in centuries. Fear was changing sides. Rome was no longer the hunter. Now it was the prey. The Romans still didn't know, but one of the greatest military strategists in history had just entered Italy, and soon Rome would suffer defeats so brutal that its empire would nearly disappear. Hannibal Barca had arrived, and he wanted Roman blood. If you enjoy real stories that feel like movie scripts, subscribe to the channel, because the next chapters of Hannibal's campaign become even more insane. Rome is about to face its worst nightmare.